Welcome to Ignite Your Confidence for women in leadership who want to speak up and stand out. I'm your host, Karen Laus. Here you'll get all of the tips and tools that you need to stand out with unshakable confidence. Let's dive into today's episode. Our next speaker is Yan Na, Ph.D. She's a researcher, professor, and organizational effectiveness consultant. In fact, Yan and I met when she was working at Nordstrom at the makeup counter over 20 years ago. She now has had a 20-year corporate career, which spans leadership development at companies such as Warner Brothers, the New York Times, Microsoft, Johnson & Johnson as well. She founded Radiance HQ, which is an organization dedicated to the advancement of Asian women in the workplace. She earned her PhD in organizational psychology, and her dissertation study focused on the experiences of Asian immigrant women and their journeys into corporate leadership. Fun facts about Yan is that she owns an Airstream travel trailer. She learned how to hitch, tow, and back up the trailer on her own. She's traveled through 28 different states since 2013. She also won a National Swing Dance Championship award, beating out 80 other contestants. She learned how to speak English by watching the Brady Bunch after coming to the US from Korea when she was 8 years old. Let's hear her start with the question that I asked. Tell us about a time when you didn't speak up but wish that you had. Here's Yan.
So Karen, that's the hard part for me because I think that that's something that I struggle with on a consistent basis. And as an Asian woman who grew up in an Asian family, and the cultural values around not speaking up, not saying things that are top of mind for you, waiting for someone to ask you to say something, that's something that I was born or raised in that kind of environment. So like many other Asian women, it's something that's always top of mind. So, the answer to your question is that there isn't a specific time, only because I challenge myself every time there is an opportunity for me to speak up. So maybe there were some times when I could have spoken up more in a work setting where you're surrounded by C-level executives. And maybe there could have been a way that I could have influenced that group in a different way. But there's not a specific time that comes up, only because it's something that's always top of mind, and I always try to push myself to balance the cultural piece, which is waiting for someone to ask for your input, versus in the American culture, you speak when you feel like you have a great idea, whether you think it's a great idea or not. So it's always this balance that I'm kind of struggling with all the time and challenging myself with.
Well, what about a time where you did speak up that you were really proud of yourself, or it was a moment of confidence?
There was a time when I was presenting at a workshop, and this was part of a larger change initiative, and we were essentially changing everything in terms of the performance management process for this company. And I came in as a consultant, and my role was to facilitate the workshop. And it was not an opportunity for people to provide input, meaning the work was already done. It was just presenting on the work. And there was a lot of resistance with the leaders in that room, because they felt like, things have been fine the way it was. The performance management process and the way we evaluate employees, that was fine. So why are we changing it? Why are you coming in as a consultant telling us that we're changing it? I want to provide my input. And in that moment, I could have said, okay, let's just take your input and see how we can change things. But it was such a, and I wouldn't necessarily say that it was a hostile work environment, because it wasn't hostile, but the environment felt very aggressive. And what I did in that moment is stop, I hear you. And in this moment, what I'm trying to do is help you to understand this new approach that's going to help you connect with your employees in a better way. It's not a time for us to brainstorm on ways to make this effective or better. We are actually doing this as is, and my role here is to help you to be best equipped to do this work. And that shifted the energy in the room, and leading up to it, it was a little bit, as I said, aggressive, but being able to stop and say, hey, I hear you, and also we're changing how we're doing this because this is what the path is. That was a really important piece to shifting the mindset really of the room.
That's really great. I mean, because I was thinking about that, like you said, it just changed things. So because of the fact that you spoke up, it made a difference. And what about people that are in that situation and they're feeling afraid and concerned about, oh, what will people think, or all the things that we feel with the self-doubt? What advice might you give someone else?
That's a really great question, and I've thought about this for some time now. And whether you're providing a group of executives with your input on something, whether you're presenting to an audience full of women who want to listen to you, whatever that mix is, I think the biggest piece for us to think about is take our ego aside and think about the message that you're providing to that group, regardless of what the group mix is, and making sure that it's not about you. They're here because they want to get something from you in terms of information and knowledge, and taking yourself out of that equation is really powerful because you're detaching yourself not from the connection that you're having with the audience, but the the ego that's associated with, is this person going to like me? You know, how am I coming across? All of those things that go through your head, that takes away from the actual message and the delivery and the power in what you could potentially provide to that group.
That's such a good reminder, especially I love what you said before about just the simple act of I hear you, the empathy, showing that you do care about them, and it is about moving things forward. So I think that's such a wonderful example. Well, in thinking about your career, you've had a lot of really interesting things in your background. So what would you say would be a career highlight for you?
So I had a few.
Yeah,
I
maybe
had a few
tell us more.
career highlights. Well, and it's not to boast about the highlight. It's really about, um, it's interesting to think back on your career journey as you reflect back on, in this point in time. Meaning, when I think about my journey and all of the different, there was no blueprint for my path. What I did was think about in each moment when there was a point of, here's, kind of the crossroads, so to speak. I can make this decision A versus decision B. And knowing that each decision is okay. And knowing that each pathway will take you to different experiences, and not lamenting on the fact later on that, oh, I should have done this because that would have taken me down this other path. Um, so because when I think about my entire career and the kind of the highlight of it, I really think about it in terms of, at each crucial moment when I was choosing either a job or a career change or this new opportunity or a different state that I was living in that moment in time, whatever decision I made was the right decision because I tried to think about what my values were and what my kind of broader vision was for my life, which is to provide help to others, especially women and Asian women in particular, in terms of their own career journey. So the highlight really has been being okay with the moments in time where I've had to make those decisions, and knowing that I trusted myself and had the answers in me, and being able to reflect enough so that I could make those decisions.
Wow. Tell us about a story when you were at the New York Times. What comes to mind?
Oh my gosh. And sorry to be political.
It's okay.
No,
We're
no,
here to be
I
honest.
won't. No. And it had to do with the environment that I was observing, and the work I did was around organization capability development. And the moment that I remember is, it was before the elections, and this was when Donald Trump was in the building, and he was just one floor below us in terms of how we were set up. Location wise, he was one floor below us, and there was all the Secret Service and all these like people, armed guards around the, not only our floor but right below us. And I think about that moment, and just again this shift in time and culture and societal shift that was going to happen that we didn't know about. I think back to that moment and how I was part of history in a lot of ways, because he was there, and that was a big moment for the New York Times, because he decided to come to the New York Times and talk to the reporters and the broader leadership team. And I think about that because, these, I think that the path that you take in your career, you can't not think about the broader societal cultural influences that are going on, and being mindful to connect those pieces are really important as you think about your own life, your own voice, your own journey. And that moment stays with me, not because it specifically relates to my professional development, but more in terms of me and who I am as a person and my own development and how I was viewing the world. I didn't know that a few months later that he would be elected to the presidency, you know? No
Yeah.
one knew that, right? So it's just those moments in time that are that stand out, that society really dictates how you live your life in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and of course, Warner Brothers is a fan favorite. What what would you share from your experience there?
That was an experience that was, I mean, I still work with them as a consultant. And what I really enjoy about that company as a whole is that there's this sense of family in a good way. I mean, in work environments, when you talk about family, it's often kind of dysfunctional, and team is a way to approach how you do work together. But what I really appreciated about that environment is that it was family oriented in a positive way, and that you had a voice at the table. So the clients I worked with, the internal clients I worked with, were the CFO and her executive team, and to be able to help that leadership team shift
Mhm.
the culture was really not only gratifying from a professional development standpoint, but also I felt inspired in a lot of ways, that you coming in there and being who you are and providing your input based on, again, taking your ego out of the situation and providing that message in a way that is going to resonate with the rest of the group. That was very empowering for
Mm,
me.
mhm, mm,
And the environment needs to, of course, be there, and that it was kind of an open, more inclusive environment than I had been before. And the big takeaway from there is being aware of the environment that you're in and how you're fitting into that environment. And not that you're trying to be a different person, but being yourself, as well as trying to adapt to the situation and being flexible. The New York Times was a different environment for me, so I had to flex and adapt in terms of how I communicated. The Warner Brothers was a fun environment, you know, it's entertainment, so
yeah.
showing up as the fun side of me, I think I think helps for me to connect.
Love it. Awesome. Well, if you think back to when you started your career, what advice would you give your younger self?
I love that question because I have thought about that for some time now. And a big part of the advice piece would be to feel feel connected to who you are in terms of what values you have, based on whether it's your cultural values or family values or personal values that you've gained over time. Being grounded in those values are really important, because that dictates the behavior that comes after, after a situation, and how you think about things. And so having that level of trust, because you have the values that you need in order to go for your goals or achieve certain dreams or achieve success, those are important pieces. So the advice would be to trust in myself, because I have all the tools and resources and the thinking that I need, and to not let others sway me in a different way. That of course I will continue to learn and grow, however, not second guessing myself,
Mm.
because I'm the one who knows myself most.
Yes, love it. How about your biggest mistake or failure and what you learned from it?
I have to say, it took me a long time to finish my undergraduate degree, only because I was working for a long time. And the fact that I continued on with my education career
Yeah.
to the point where I am now, I think it's interesting to think that early on I didn't know what I wanted to do. So in my mind, as an Asian immigrant, I thought I just need to make money,
Mm.
because my family always struggled with making ends meet and things like that. So I need to make money, because that's going to equate to success. So rather than focusing on let me get my uh, 4-year degree under my belt, I worked while I was going to school. So it took me over 10 years to finish my undergrad degree, and I meandered in terms of the topics and areas that I was interested in. And when I think back, I don't have regrets about the long kind of journey I took in my career. When I think back, I don't even know if it was a mistake. It was more, I wonder how things could have been if I just completed my 4-year degree in the time allotted. and
Sure.
and who knows what kind of acceleration could have happened beyond that. But, no regrets. However, it is that point where I think, maybe it didn't need to take 10 years for me to finish my undergrad. I could have been doing so much more during my weekends than studying my entire life. So that would be the one thing.
I love it. Well, what was it like or tell us about the Airstream experience. What made you decide? And then, yeah, anything you want to share about that. We'll wrap up with that.
So I have an Airstream that I bought in 2013, early that year. And the reason I did that is because, and it was very much tied to the American dream of traveling around the country with my dog, my hair blowing in the wind, writing and taking photos. I don't know where that image comes from, but that's something that's in my head. And the other piece too is my dad had always loved road trips. And before he got sick and passed away, I had this opportunity to buy an Airstream, take him and my mom on a couple of road trips. And it was really meaningful for me because not only was I fulfilling my own dream, but also fulfilling the dream of my dad. And so the Airstream and my experience and association with the Airstream is very powerful and also very, very personal and deeply moving in a lot of ways. And to be able to, talk about power and feeling empowered, to be able to learn how to hitch up an Airstream to your car, learn how to back it up into spots and travel the country with my dog and the wind in the hair.
Yes.
It was an extremely empowering experience, and I still have it. And I try to go out as much as possible. But I've traveled across the country 2.5 times now. I'm looking at my map. 2.5 times now.
Oh my gosh.
Coast to coast. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
cool. Well, let's go into a lightning round of questions.
Okay.
And we'll just come with whatever comes to mind. And in the spirit of what you just shared, what is your favorite travel destination?
I love the desert. In the middle of nowhere, like no one around, and you're in the self-contained unit, and you don't need to rely on anything else other than you, yourself, and whatever's in my Airstream. So I love the desert.
Love it. Fill in the blank. In high school, I was most likely to
Be popular.
I'm not surprised. What is your guilty pleasure or not so guilty pleasure on Netflix?
Oh gosh. So many, but Dead to Me is only 2 seasons of it, but that's a guilty pleasure. I don't even know if it's really well acted, so I don't think it's a guilty pleasure. Great storyline, great acting.
Love it. What's on your nightstand right now?
Oh, I have a book by Bell Hooks, and it's called Bone Black, and it's her memoir. And I love reading memoirs because I'm writing a personal narrative book. So I love reading other people's memoirs. So that's what's on my nightstand.
Awesome. How about something that you always keep in your purse?
Lipstick.
And your first concert?
Okay, dating myself. The Stray Cats.
Oh, yes. That's great. Where was your first kiss?
Oh my gosh. Oh, it was some park in San Francisco in high school. Yeah.
That's great.
Park.
All right, we'll end with this one. Your favorite quote or mantra?
My favorite quote is by Anise Nin, and it's, that life shrinks or expands in proportion to one's courage. And that's been my mantra and my favorite quote, because I feel like depending on where you are mindset wise in your life, that opportunities, big opportunities or small opportunities will come to you. And just being aware of where you sit with yourself, I think is important, because you could take those opportunities as they come along.
Love it. Well, Jan, it's been such a pleasure, of course, to have you here today. For those that want to connect with you, where can we reach you?
They can reach me at hello@Yon Consults, and that's YON Consults.com.
And that's a wrap of another episode of Ignite Your Confidence. I'm your host, Karen Laus. Thank you so much for listening. If you loved today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. It helps other people find the podcast faster, and it certainly helps me. If you're interested in more tips and tools around confidence, please join me over in my Facebook group called Ignite Your Confidence with Karen Laus. Remember, you too can stand out with unshakable confidence.